This episode is brought to you by message compression. I think we can all agree that listening to people explain things is a massive drag. Sociologists have determined that when someone is giving us carefully and thoughtfully detailed step-by-step instructions or illuminating information on any new topic, what we're most commonly writing in our little notepads is, how can I end this conversation as quickly as possible? Typically, we resolve this problem the old-fashioned way, stopping our instructor in mid-sentence by putting our hand to his face and saying, "Got it," and fast walking out of the room. Unfortunately, this sometimes leaves the person who might well be our boss feeling disrespected. What a dilemma. Well, worry no more, because now you have message compression, the amazing artificial intelligence system that breaks down every interaction into a brief, consumable summary. How do they do it? Just insert your earbuds and turn on the message compression app. The ingenious software will extract all the extraneous piffle like context, background, nuance, and the ultimate point, leaving only a pretty good sense of what was being conveyed, similar to what you'd get if you were daydreaming through the whole thing. Look, let me save you all some time right now. I've taken today's episode and run it through the message compression app. Check how much more efficient this is.
First Severian.
Jung's description of Nietzsche's critique of Schopenhauer.
All I'm saying is read Hamlet's Mill.
Curiositas Urthus.
Sounds pretty Robert Borski-ish. Boy, did you just save a lot of time. And when you order, use the promo code REREAD, one word, to try out their heightened message compression system, which is actually just a pair of earplugs. And thank you, Message Compression, for sponsoring the Rereading Wolf podcast. This episode is brought to you by the support of generous listeners just like you. You can learn how to be one of them at patreon.com/rereadingwolf. And thank you, listener patrons, for supporting the Rereading Wolf podcast.
Warning. The following discussion is deliberately riddled with spoilers and unhinged speculation on this 40-year-old book, Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun. You can't read a Gene Wolfe story. You can only reread a Gene Wolfe story.
Welcome to Rereading Wolf. We've read these books many times, and we assume you have too, or at least plan to. Besides, we're here to understand them, and that means considering the works as a whole.
Hi, I'm James Wynn.
And I'm Craig Brewer.
Craig, we have corrections.
Hey, you was wrong.
All right, so on Facebook, Toby Keemer says, I find the pronunciation debates a bit pointless, especially when it comes to pronouncing classical names. I remember we were talking about the different way. I forget a bit whose name we were wondering about. Maybe it was Cyriaca, but this case he uses example of Cyriaca as an example. He says,
I know we complained about Kibbe or Kaibe or Sibi
maybe that's
but that was way back a long time ago.
Well, he says this, especially if we're going down that route, Cyriaca shouldn't be pronounced Cyriaca should be pronounced Cyriaca, or rather Kuriaka with the Y. The Greek Y is an upsilon being pronounced oo. Typhon would be Tufpan. The Greek phi being pronounced as an aspirated P, not like our English fricative F. Vodalus would be Wodalus, the classical Latin V being pronounced as an English W. Jolenta would be Yolenta, the classical Latin consonant rendered as the English J, and being pronounced like an English Y, etc. It's rather like insisting that when we talk about Roman history, we ought to be referring not to Julius Caesar, but to Julius Kaiser. Yeah.
And it's a totally fair point. I'm with him that it becomes hard to know. And, you know, I think I even chimed in there at one point and said, yep, I know there's things I totally pronounce incorrectly, but I don't, it's just how it is now. When we first started doing this, I remember being super self-conscious, like, oh, we're going to say something wrong and everybody else is going to know it's the wrong way to say it. And now once you start a pronunciation debate, it just never resolves. So nobody knows. But one thing Marcus Gavea did say in there, he asked if we should find out just how Wolfe pronounced them. Like, that would be like, who cares about the original classical thing? Like, what did Wolfe think? And,
I'm not going down that route. He inevitably pronounced them entirely wrong.
His own way. Yeah, his own idiom.
He had his own thing going on. And it's probably actually very important because he probably is operating on a bunch of puns as far as that's concerned.
Probably, it could be, but that would be fun to have. Like, if somebody wants a project, go listen to all the interviews and listen for every proper name he uses and make a lexicon for us. Unless Mantis has already done that.
Maybe someone will get that idea one day. Yeah, Austin Beeman also doesn't think there should be much concern about Earth. He mentions that even the word Earth he's seen it pronounced both Earth and Ooth, so, which provoked Mark Aramini. He says, "My God, it is Earth. That's the whole point. Sounding the same, but making the reference."
Yeah, it's the which one? I think it was the audiobook from the 80s where what's his name? I forgot his name, but he pronounces it Urth. He always says Urth.
Urth. Well, I guess probably if you're going to go back to the fate, the Norn, it would be Erd or something like that, or Weird, actually, with the U. So, yeah, I get it. I'm still, I realize that it's a ridiculous ideal to strive to, but
let's remember the context of the books, which is that this is all so far in the future that everyone has forgotten the actual history, just like the Brown book. So they should be mispronouncing them, which means that however we mispronounce them is obviously correct.
Yeah, it's a translation, right? It's kind of it's like when people discovered that Bilbo Baggins wasn't named Bilbo Baggins, that it's for some reason, some sort of translation that Tolkien devised for Bilbo, for in Hobbit language, it's something totally different.
And nobody liked it. Like, I think he gave somebody either Bilbo or Frodo's name somewhere, and
Frodo's name. I think
not good. You don't like that. It should be Frodo.
It's Frodo, so don't mess with it. Only an academic would screw up something perfect as Bilbo Baggins with but actually. So on Reddit, we got a lot of comments. First Person Jugular says, for whatever reason, I don't care one bit who Cyriaca's husband is. The question is whether it's Racho or not. It's nice. It's always nice to have a backstory. He says, but for some reason, the idea that her uncle is Kibby delights me. The fact that their names begin the same. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. He thinks that's nearly ironclad, since anyone whose name starts with a CY, I guess he thinks that they ought to be relatives for sure. Yeah, and even First Person agrees that it doesn't. Her description of what he does versus what his job, Kibby's job as Olden's assistant, doesn't really quite match up. He doesn't really care. He thinks it's a small matter.
So Pantopsilus had a cool thing about wondering if the years had been longer in the past, because Cyriaca mentions that. And I like that, because he says, as time has progressed, the tidal forces of the sun have slowly reduced the rate at which our world is spinning. So a few 100 million years ago, a day was considerably shorter than it is now. And as a result, there were more days for each revolution of the sun. It goes on. Severian's time is presumably far enough in the future for this process to be noticeably further along. A year is not necessarily shorter in the sense that the Earth takes less time, but it does contain fewer days, which was kind of interesting. And I never really thought about. You're keeping track of the days, so that would be something to see if it does seem like the days and the years. But I don't know that we're gonna get enough to really make that distinction. But
I expected that actually the lunar calendar would be shorter, but I don't think he's actually changing the lunar calendar length at all. If my calculations are correct and my assumptions about those calculations. Pantopsilus also pointed out that Androsphinx, that was one of the places where they were hoarding all of the ancient knowledge. It literally means male sphinx in contrast to the gynosphinx of Greek myth. Yeah. The idea that the ancient repositories are marked by androsphinxes, and he adds a possible plural androsphinxes. It says it reminds me of the white sphinx that the time traveler discovers in H.G. Wells' Time Machine, which is that's pretty cool. What about his dispute with your objection to Typhon being the old autarch of myth?
I just don't, that doesn't work. We certainly know he's not the original autarch. But it just seemed more like a legendary figure, just because as we eventually learn, right, autarch is a relatively recent name, and Typhon seems more like he's someone.
No, yeah, Typhon wasn't really called an autarch, though, right? He was a monarch, right?
But I get the point. I still get the point.
Yeah. So Mantis, Michael Andre Driussi, he says, first up, a little late to the party, but in Thrax, Severian encounters the costume gag again. Yeah, he points out that when he enters the rag shop, there's a guy wearing a mask when he first walks in there. But masks are kind of an important feature, though, in this whole novel. The Hydrodules wear masks. Everybody wears a kind of a mask in some way. And they often wear masks of themselves. So you have the false Thecla and the false Thea and all of those. Cyriaca as Shrad.
Scheherazade, yeah.
Scheherazade, yeah. Cyriaca is Scheherazade, seducing for her life. In Wolfe's piece, Olivia plays at being Scheherazade, but he says, Cyriaca is really Scheherazade. The vignette of her telling her story to her children really spells it out, depicting Cyriaca as a practiced storyteller, with the added bonus that Scheherazade actually did give birth to a couple of kids in the course of her trials.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that. That's just kind of cool idea.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. I had not made that connection, but it totally fits, especially when you added the point about how she makes clothes for special occasions. And there's something about that with Scheherazade being the same kind of dressmaker or something like that. We had just talked about one of Wolfe's stories for 1001 Nights, and for to have Scheherazade here be Cyriaca, who is literally telling a story to keep herself alive. Yeah, it's got to be. I just want to know now, what other stories might Cyriaca be able to tell us too?
No, well, she must have a lot. She has probably at least 999 more, right?
I mean, her uncle told her a lot of stories, I would imagine. So, yeah.
Mantis also points out the nested nature of her own tale. Frame, you have Uncle Bibliophile, his direct experience at the Lost Archives, and then the history background from his book. Cyriaca's Pandora vignette, reading to the history, back to the uncle's book, ending with the Q&A session. The nesting captures, he says, the story within a story structure that the Arabian Nights are famous for.
Yeah. And that's actually even more appropriate, because if you are a Patreon subscriber, then the story we're going to read is Wolfe's contribution to a little story of further tales of 1001 Arabian Nights.
Yeah, Wolfe improves on an Arabian Night, right?
Yep.
It's really, I really enjoyed that one. It was very revealing for me. Mantis finally chimes in. He says the Midnet and the San Benito as a pair. Remember, a Midnet is kind of a shop girl, and a San Benito is a penitent, or a guy who's possibly going to be executed. Is something like she makes clothes for special occasions, and he wears clothes for special occasions. So wouldn't be caught dead in that. So, here's something. Get Elephant Build on Reddit also pitched a question toward me, because I had said that she says that all of these things happened before the first stones of Nessus were laid. And I said, I don't know that sounds plausible, because I kind of have a different understanding about what Nessus is. It seems obvious that it's kind of a reference back to Buenos Aires. And it talks about how Nessus was founded by autochthons. I think of those autochthons as being us. Anyway, but so Get on a Fifth Build says, when Cyriaca says that the events she describes occurred before the first stones of Nessus were laid, James said he considered this a dubious statement, as it conflicts with the earlier statement by Dorcas's father that Nessus began as an autochthon village where the Gyle joins the sea, and Craig appeared to agree. Could you clarify for me how these statements are in conflict, and if they are, how you decide which one is dubious and which one isn't? There's a puzzle right there. Cyriaca drops a lot of knowledge in this chapter. How can you tell what is or what isn't to be believed? Yeah, that's a tough one. First of all, I think that it seems clear to me that Nessus is a reference to Buenos Aires, that the Gyle is somehow to be taken for the Uruguay River. So I don't think it's possible for all these to have happened before the first stones of Nessus were laid. Thus, I believe Dorcas's father rather than Cyriaca. Yeah, Cyriaca has a lot of information, but all of her information is second or third hand, and it comes from books of unknown provenance. So if I was going to give in on something, I'd probably view Cyriaca's, her story as having less reliability to it. So that's how I choose which one. Now, the reason I think that it doesn't fit the story is that because I think it harkens back to Buenos Aires, I think that those particular autochthons who built Nessus originally are us, or perhaps the original Amazonian tribes who undoubtedly, first founded fishing villages at the mouth of that river. So anyway, that's why I think it doesn't really fit, because all these things to me clearly happened much later than our current times. But it's still, we should consider that it's entirely possible that Buenos Aires has been nothing but rubble and ruins by the time Nessus was founded. Nessus might have well been refounded on the ruins of that particular city. And so they could be both true.
I don't know exactly how to do it. It does just seem like if we're going to talk about, AI robots going off and leaving us, then that's still something, in the future. So we're talking about something, that's happened way in the past of this story. Yeah. And, but still in our future right now. It just makes the most sense. But as for proof of any of that, well, we don't know. I mean, that's part of the fun of this, is that it's all just, her relating what her uncle had told her he had read somewhere, but how reliable is this supposed to be? Well, that's the whole point, is it's not. We're just dealing with what we got and trying to piece things together. Yeah. There will never be a consensus on these books, as I say over and over. Also, you might want to check out the Rereading Wolf podcast subreddit. Mike Farrar has a very long, very interesting thread of his thoughts on the Library of the Citadel chapter. So I'm recommending that one. On email, Taylor Lowry sent us some thoughts. He says he keeps feeling like there's some connection between Cyriaca and Cyriaca, just because her name pretty much sound the same, but I'm not sure what to do with it. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So he points out that they're both sirens, so there you go. Yeah, we got a lot of people enjoying the Ryan Leslie episode. I was glad that people. Yeah, well done on Ryan. He's the one who wrote the book. But
but you added your mellow tones to that.
Yes. Yeah. We just got to get these to sell enough so that he's encouraged to write a sequel, so that I can do the sequel to the Colossus as well. But that was fun. It's good to do that. He's sort of become a good friend in the last few years, and it was fun to help out and do that and finally get an official audiobook out there in the world, and just wanted to help him get his next book a little more press.
Yeah, I've always told you should be doing voiceovers. That could be your new career.
And
that's where all the big money is. Yeah. Pentopsilus liked the sponsor ad on that one. He says, "Hey, be careful when it comes to the opening sponsor spot. Are you sure you didn't just accidentally promote a service that actually exists?" Which is made me laugh, because when my wife listened to it, she says, "You know how people often say confuse your sponsor ads for being real? This is one of those that people are gonna think is real. It's a very credible delivery." And as soon as if someone just invents that, I guess, then they can pay us money.
That'd be awesome.
Will be their sponsor. Yeah.
We own the copyright now.
somebody get self-care so we can sue you later.
All right. Well, let's move on to the chapter and keep moving through Sword.
So this is basically the wrap up of Severian's time with Cyriaca. Actually, not really, but as far as you know. And so we're going to get to hear some more of Cyriaca's backstory and why, Severian, we get a return of the Archon, right? Okay, well, it's not going to exegete itself, so let's get on with it.
Chapter 7, Attractions.
Okay, here we go. We're at the 7th chapter, and we're still 24 hours into this story. And I should mention, that the whole first 12 chapters of this novel are just the first 24 hours. So
different from how the first 12 chapters or whatever of Sword for years and years. But
yeah.
Even though it does, and we'll talk about this later, but it does kind of follow a similar pattern to Sword, from like everything in one city at first, sort of being part of an institution and then having to run off. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So why do you think this is called Attractions? It might as well have been called the Well of Orchids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think since so much of it is like a long digression of Severian like talking about his women again, sort of it seems like it's that kind of thing. With the way it ends, I kept trying to think of like, okay, what's the meaning of that? There could be something about how he was attracted to the person he was.
We're attracted to each other. Yeah,
I had a guess that she was the one, but he was still kind of attracted to her. So, I mean, it could be something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I would guess that Cyriaca's murder is supposed to be one of the events, one of the attractions of this party, right?
I was wondering, is that like, was it supposed to be a public thing or?
Well, what? Yeah, I mean, I got the idea that the whole point was that the Archon isn't supposed to, be directly connected to it. Mm-hmm. But maybe it is, maybe it has to, maybe that's part of the deal, that it has to be some sort of legal execution and public. Yeah. Her husband may have detailed everything about this particular event.
It could be. But since, we'll talk about this, that we don't actually see anything like that. We also don't see the fact that he lets her go. We get all that later.
He lets it dangle like that, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. The Armigurus Cyriaca has proposed that she and Severian have sex. So they did. And he could describe the sex, or he could compare and rank all the other women that he's had. And Severian, which one he opted for.
Yeah. So almost I drowned in the delight she gave me. For though I did not love her as I had once loved Thecla, nor as I loved Dorcas even then, and she was not as beautiful as Jolenta had once been beautiful, I felt a tenderness for her that was no more than in part born of the unquiet wine, and she was such a woman as I had dreamed of as a ragged boy in the Matterton Tower, before I had ever beheld Thea's heart-shaped face by the side of the opened grave. and she knew far more of the arts of love than any of the three.
So in case you missed it, just because he's having sex with a woman that he just met at a party, and I mean he has sex at the party, well, but that doesn't mean he's not still in love with Dorcas. I mean, why would anyone think that?
Oh, of course not.
Yeah. So, they finish up and go to, quote, flowing basin of silver to wash. Now, later she's going to call it a caldarium. This term and the way she uses it suggests that this flowing basin is in a secluded room. A caldarium is a hot, steamy room heated by an underfloor heating system of tunnels with hot air that is heated by a furnace, which is tended by slaves. Now, I don't think it's necessary to assume that the Archon's caldarium is exactly like that. Maybe it's no more than a bath of hot water.
But like a sauna or something.
Yeah. But it might work like that. The Romans had a whole bathing system. First, they oil you up, and then you go in the caldarium, which is a kind of steam room, and then they scrape the oil off of you, and then you swim in a public pool, which is called the frigidarium. Yeah. There are a pair of women there, too. Severian says they had also just had sex with the other, or at least he's convinced they have, and they know exactly what Severian and Cyriaca have been up to. So it's, just that kind of party. This is what the upper classes are up to in Thrax. Well, the two women know what they've been doing, and they laugh when they see them there. But Severian is really no good at parties, and he seems to react violently as he's prone to. And as he puts it, when they saw that I would not spare them because they were women, they fled shrieking.
Yeah, it was a weird line. Like, was he threatening them? Like, get out of here or something? Like.
Yeah, I would say so. Who knows? Yeah, I mean he seems to have gone over the top. He's a little. He's not able to be Mr. Cool at a party.
I guess that's where it was odd. Like, it was like he was just like, get out of here or something, and he wasn't gonna be like, okay, you guys finish because you're women and be chivalrous. Is that what he means or something?
Yeah, well, I bet he's not all that comfortable around women anyway. He's not. Yeah, I mean, any kind of women laughing at him.
Women that were not interested in him. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But just the fact that they're women, he's probably annoyed that they're having a good time. Yeah. So Severian and Cyriaca wash each other in the caldarium, and he'd assumed that they split up at this point, but they don't. Instead, they, quote, went out into the silent little garden, which was full of night, and stood beside a lonely fountain. Right. However, Severian just says, quote, perhaps it would have been better if we had separated. And I can only guess he means that if they'd parted, he probably would have found her later and killed her, and then he wouldn't have ended up, having had to flee Thrax.
Yeah, so I think that's right. Yeah. He stayed after and he bonded a little bit.
Right.
I guess is kind of what it was.
So even after he's seen how everything turned out, he's still Mr. Glass half empty, right? But we get a little story from Cyriaca about her relationship with her husband and how she feels like a kept bird and why she sleeps around on him. And the two of them stand alone and apart beside the fountain, holding hands. And he says, quote, as children do, suggesting that in his culture, holding hands is not something adults do, right?
Yep. So Cyriaca says in a very low voice, have you ever visited the House Absolute?
And Severian says, yeah. And that is really appealing to her because she tightens her hold on his hand.
Yep. Did you ever visit the Well of Orchids there?
No.
And then she says, I've been to the House Absolute also, but I have never seen the Well of Orchids.
As far as symbolism goes, orchids embody beauty, opulence, and sexuality. So this is the court of the autarch's consort. But there is no consort. So it's not clear how it's being used. This is really a well-written passage. So why don't you go ahead and read it all?
Yeah, and it's actually it's sad. Like I didn't remember feeling this sad when I read it before, but reading it this time, it's sort of a sad little commentary on her life. But yeah, so it says, it's said that when the autarch has a consort, ours does not, of course, she holds her court there in the most beautiful place in the world. Even now, only the loveliest are permitted to walk in that spot. And that's an important point. Only the loveliest are allowed to walk. When I was there, we stayed, my lord and I, in a certain small room appropriate to our armigerial rank. One evening when my lord was gone, and I did not know where, I went out into the corridor, and as I stood there looking up and down, a high functionary of the court passed by. I didn't know his name or his office, but I stopped him and asked if I might go to the Well of Orchids. She paused. For the space of 3 or 4 breaths, there was no sound but the music from the pavilions and the tinkling of the fountain. And he stopped and looked at me, I think in some surprise. You cannot know how it feels to be a little armagette from the north, in a gown sewn by your own maids and provincial jewels, and be looked at so by someone who has spent all his life among the exultants of the House Absolute. Then he smiled. She gripped my hand very tightly now. And he told me, down such and such a corridor, and turn at such a statue, up certain steps, and along the ivory path. Oh, Severian, my lover. Her face was radiant as the moon itself. I knew the moment she had described had been the crown of her life, and that she now treasured the love I had given her, partially, and perhaps largely, because it had recalled to her that moment, when her beauty had been weighed by one she felt fit to rule upon it, and had not been found wanting. My reason told me I should take offense at that, but I could find no resentment in me. He went away, and I began to walk as he had said, 1 score of strides, perhaps 2 score. Then I met my lord, and he ordered me to return to our little room.
Yeah, well, that's
so sad. It's like the greatest thing she's ever experienced or whatnot, and then she can't fulfill it.
Because her husband is like
on this guy. Yeah,
people are noticing my beautiful wife, right?
Yep.
So Severian says,
the way the House Absolute seems to work, he might have been able to,
that may be. Well, look at the parties. Well, Severian says, I see, and I think he actually does. Mm-hmm. Cyriaca is married to a guy who she considers beneath her, perhaps beneath any woman. And he crushes every advantage that his station might actually offer to her. Perhaps he's very insecure. He worries that she'll be unfaithful. And in doing that, at least in Cyriaca's mind, it's the reason she is unfaithful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also a little bit of a parallel there that, we know eventually Severian is going to stand in to be the one judged, right, for something. So there's a bit of sympathy, it seems like, there with, if not in his mind right now, at least this kind of larger symbolic parallel between, like he knows he's standing in for something and he's hoping to sort of, just like you said, she's provincial, she's someone small, but the grand look upon her and are like, okay. And it's kind of like, it's a moment of weird grace. And it's almost kind of like he was looking for that too. So, yeah.
So she says, so is it wrong then for me to betray him the way I did with you? As Severian says, I am no magistrate. That is to say, I'm not your judge. But Cyriaca,
even though he is, so
well, that's a good point. But Cyriaca has developed a reputation, which is why her husband wants to get rid of her.
Yeah, everyone judges me, all my friends, all my lovers, of whom you are neither the first nor the last, even those women in the caldarium just now.
Well, she says neither the first nor the last, but who knows? But Severian says that as a torturer and carnifex, he's trained not judge and only carry out executions as ordered. So Severian says, I will not judge you or your husband.
Yeah, and it's at this point, this is kind of the first probably little bit of clue that you get that, oh, she's the one. It's just this kind of, vague thing of like, bringing it up. Like, you're supposed to be the judge. No, I don't judge. I just carry out my executioner's orders. Like, and you're like,
hello.
oh, maybe. Yeah. So, but of course, he's gonna end up acting as a judge and say, "No, I'm gonna let her go." So,
and she's actually spinning this whole date that they're on. This is her pleading her case with him because she knows what he's there for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely seems like that. Once, especially by the time you get to the end of the chapter, then you look back at this whole part and all of her explaining herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's Severian was maybe partly right that the reason she was having such a good time was he reminded her of the House Absolute, but that wasn't the whole story, right? No. Especially when she starts giving all these, she's talking about being judged, about other
right, exactly.
Passing a sentence upon her.
And now she says something that tells us about her and leads to an interesting conversation.
Yeah. "I judge," she said, and turned her face toward the bright, hard light of the stars. For the first time since I had glimpsed her across the crowded ballroom, I understood how I could have mistaken her for a monial of the order whose habit she wore. Or at least I tell myself I judge, and I find myself guilty. But I can't stop. I think I draw men like you to myself. Were you drawn? There were women there lovelier than I am now, I know.
This is here we're talking about attractions.
Attractions, yep.
Yeah. And it's kind of like Severian in a previous chapter was talking about necromancers and vivimancers. Vivimancers are people who summon the living to themselves, right? And this is a bit like that. So attractions, right? And this is, they're drawing, they're connecting each other to each other. And that's kind of like, Severian brings up another kind of attraction at this point. Did she draw Severian to her in some way? And Severian doesn't know for sure, and which brings him to the story of Abu Punchau, which we actually leapt ahead and read in the last chapter of the Conciliator. He talks about how necromancy that the witches performed, and that he thinks the man they resurrected was a vivimancer, which is to say, they were only performing this ritual because Abu Punchau was summoning them to himself, particularly summoning Severian.
Yep.
Now, how you interpret Severian's theory, if you choose to weigh it with significance at all, depends on your concept of time and cause and effect in this book. Maybe we should read it because I do want to consider this time, whether it has any significance to Cyriaca. I definitely do believe there are some parallels that are making Severian wonder. But let me prepare the ground to say that Severian came to this party expecting to find a woman who he was to murder. And the first woman he was compelled to approach is that very woman. Now, the reason Severian is supposed to murder her is because of her penchant for drawing men to her and being drawn in turn. So did her actions, in a way, summon Severian to this party? And did she draw him right to her, believing she was a holy Pellerine to whom he owed a debt? So let's just look at this and think about it.
Yeah. So, and I would say, too, that the fact that she is dressed as a Pellerine brings up an important point, because when Severian and Dorcas talk about causes before, they talk about, material causes, efficient causes, and then like final causes, like the purpose of something. And that would be where, like the sort of more Platonic stuff we talked about, where there are causes that are outside of time. They're not part of the causal chain, but it may be the cause that leads there to be, like the divine cause that leads all the material causes to happen, all that kind of thing. And the fact that, like you said, she kind of puts on a nun's habit, a Pellerine's habit, points to maybe some kind of higher attraction too that's going on, which then gets you into that area of, was it an attraction that happened not because of some, physical magnetism on her part or, psychic powers or something, but more because it's supposed to help lead Severian towards a certain destiny.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of thing, which maybe so, we'll see. But so we'll get into it. So Severian says he's going to explain himself. Says, on the way here, I'll explain some other time who I was traveling with.
I don't think he ever gets the chance to explain this to Cyriaca. And frankly, I wonder why he thought he would, no matter how this plays out. But he doesn't want to spell out that who he was with, for all intents and purposes, was his wife.
Yeah. That's kind of what I saw when he said that. I was like, now is not the time to bring up Dorcas. Yeah. So we fell in with a witch and her famula and her client, who had come to a certain place to re-inspirit the body of a man long dead.
Cyriaca is really impressed. That's incredible. I've heard about these things. Tell me, but make sure you tell me the truth.
Yeah. And we should also note that this is the connection finally in Sword between what happened at the end of Claw and what we're getting now.
Right. We finally get a payoff.
Yep, just like the delayed thing where you wait a couple chapters and finally he and Jonas have a conversation about what happened back then. And so the same thing is kind of going on here. But so he says, there really isn't anything much to tell. Our path lay through a deserted city. And when we saw their fire, we went to it because we had someone with us who was ill. When the witch brought back the man she had come to revive, I thought at first that she was restoring the whole city. It wasn't until several days afterward that I understood.
And now it gets interesting.
And also kind of interesting that in this story, he kind of, like, oh yeah, and the witch brought the guy back. But that was the weird thing was, So I found I couldn't say what it was I understood. That it was, in fact, on the level of meaning above language. A level we like to believe scarcely exists, though if it were not for the constant discipline we have learned to exercise upon our thoughts, they would always be climbing to it unaware.
Then Severian explains, right?
Yeah, and that part, by the way, I think is kind of, it's an allusion to those sort of higher meanings. The final causes. So I didn't really understand, of course. I still think about it, and I still don't. But I know somehow that she was bringing him back, and he was bringing the stone town back with him as a setting for himself. Sometimes I've thought that perhaps it had never had any reality apart from him, so that when we rode over its pavements and the rubble of its walls, we were actually riding among his bones. He did return, and then the client was dead, and the sick woman who had been with us also, and Apu Punchau, that was the dead man's name, was gone again. The witches ran away, I think, though perhaps they flew.
Yeah. Did they fly? That's what witches do. So Severian thinks it's possible. But the Kumean, at least, is also a Haradjul. Maybe Marin is too. I know it's assumed that she's just a human girl that was, given to the witches by the torturers. But without spoiling beyond this book, I think we have some reason to believe that she's other than merely human. Yep. She might be human, but she might be other than that besides. Certainly that's true for Baldanders and Jolenta.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anyway, Jolenta was dead, and so was Hildegren, and the witches were gone, and the Destriers too. So Severian and Dorcas proceed on foot, and by evening they come up to the hut of a poor family, and with everyone else asleep, Severian talks to the husband and his mother. The man knew a lot about the stone town, but he doesn't know its original name. And readers have been trying to guess its original name for a long time. I mean, we have Lake Titicaca just up there. I mean, surely there's something, but no one knows its original name if Wolfe had something in mind. And I will say that if it's an identifiable place for me, I think it would have to be somewhere between Salto, Uruguay, the village of Saltus, and the Iguazu Falls in Argentina, Thrax, cataracts. Severian thinks his mother knew more about the stone town than the man did, but she wasn't really talking. They said the town had been a ruin long before their ancestors came to the area of the Commonwealth. It's a very enticing to suppose that this stone town is an actual ruin that we could identify today. The man says that he had treasure hunted there since he was a boy. He's only found broken stones and pottery shards and the tracks of other searchers who had been there long before him. As we mentioned, was a time when people believed you could draw gold by burying coins in the ground. And so today, at the Severian's time, treasure hunters, this family in particular, can find enough gold coins to live on.
Which is cool. And one thing I'd say about the city, before I really thought about it or even looked at a map, I always imagined that it was, Machu Picchu or something like that was where they were. They're not in some like gorgeous high mountain area or something like that. But that's sort of at least to me, when they talk about a stone town, I always imagine some kind of, ancient Native American type of city.
Yeah.
The fact that they're on a roof, though, like if you look at your Machu Picchu pictures, they don't, like, the roofs are all gone. So it's probably not the best, but
it's not very good. Well, doesn't fit the location either, but
no, that's, if you readily look at a map, that's Machu Picchu itself is not it. But I always imagine that he's talking about some kind of Incan or Aztec type of,
something like that.
Yeah.
But also, because of something we're about to talk about, the Severians have been about to talk about, considering the cause and effect, is it possible that this man and his mother are drawing gold from the ground, reaching back into time to these people who are burying those gold coins in the ground so that they can find them later?
Yeah, and that totally fits the kind of magic logic that they're talking about, because the idea was like, if you plant gold, you'll get more, which of course is not going to happen, but it kind of does create this situation where, because they planted it back then, it does make more gold for the people.
For the people later.
But even then, you could be like, is there some sort of backwards thing going on where, like, it would be like, look, we really need gold, and so that means that in the past people will have buried it for us or something. But the cause and effect gets all kind of mixed up in some of these stories here in interesting ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here we're talking about these gold coins being drawn back over time. The Apapunchau is a vivimancer who draws people who summon him. And then there's all this talk about Severian wondering if Cyriaca somehow summoned him to this party. And Severian notes that the man's mother summoned Thecla's mind, another summoning. And while talking to her, he looked at his hands a couple times and was startled to see how thick his hands were and how brown they were, and that they had no rings. And he wonders if she resembled one of Thecla's nurses or something. I don't think it's that, but I think it's something, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, like, what he tells us here about the guy's mother doesn't give us enough information to try and really, recognize something. And I didn't know if it was just if it's the mother figure or what, but something about her can bring Thecla out of him so much that he just kind of forgets who he is for a little while. Lets Thecla take over.
I mean, I don't have any way to nail this down or explain it, but imagine it's possible that this woman is in some way, her ancestors are related to Thecla's ancestors, that it's a split off in some way.
Could be. Yeah.
So I also, I've been puzzling over Severian's complexion. Thecla said that Severian's complexion was paler than hers, but I think she was just flattering him. Severian is not particularly pale. I bet he has olive skin.
Yeah, because he calls his fingers brown. He's always certainly painted as black hair, being
very pale. Yeah, right. Like a
goth guy or
Moorcock, right? So
Elric. Yep. Elric, or even Dream. I mean,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Sandman. Yeah. So he keeps going. He says, "Then the old woman told me there was something in the stone town that truly drew its like to it."
And here, my friends, is from where the theories come that Cyriaca is related to Severian, and additionally, of course, that Severian drew Severian in this case.
Is this? I forget. Does Borsky talk about that? Is this one that came up with him a long time ago?
I'd have to look up. There are so many people drawing family trees. I'd have to figure out which one. I'd have to go back and hunt down which one. But if you look on the Earth list, you can always find people supposing who's related to who. And that she's his aunt. I think generally she's Cyriaca is like considered his aunt or something like that.
Yeah.
But
I got to say, I'm not as much a fan of that, because what's so important about all the connections here about attractions and whatnot is that it's not that there's some, secret mechanical cause like that brings them together, but rather that it's more the idea that no, there's a meaning or a purpose or a destiny or something that leads things to be caused in ways that don't seem like mechanical causes. And that just fits thematically more with the chapter and sort of the ideas I think they're messing with. So, but still, who knows? Why not both? Why not both? So,
right. Well, I see your point. I mean, I like the idea that there's something else going on in the plot besides blood, but but family is also kind of important as far as those drawings are concerned. I mean, a lot of those people who are drawn in other ways end up also having some sort of familial relationship to Severian.
Yeah. So, but old woman spells it out. So she says, "You've heard tales of necromancers," she said, "who fish for the spirits of the dead. Do you know there are vivimancers among the dead, who call to them those who can make them live again? There is such a one in the stone town, and once or twice in each Soros, one of those he has called to him will sup with us."
Remember that a sorrow is 223 lunar cycles, which is 18 years and some change.
And by the way, talking about fishing for the spirits of the dead is...
Yes, fishing. Yeah. Iniri. I guess we know what Iniri is now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also fishing for Dorcas's corpse. And,
right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And looking at it. Yeah.
So, have her up like a trout, right?
Exactly. And then she said to her son, You will recall the silent man who slept beside his staff. You are only a child, but you'll remember him, I think. He was the last until now. Then I knew that I, too, had been drawn by the vivimancer Apu Punchau, though I had felt nothing.
I don't know if we're supposed to recognize this guy who sleeps with his staff.
Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah. Like, was it Iniri, maybe?
I'm surprised that I've never read a theory that it's the narrator of the Book of the Short Sun.
There you go. This was the passage that gave Wolfe.
Yeah, there you go. He had it planned all along, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm dubious, but a lot of people think Wolfe had that story outlined when he wrote the Book of the New Sun. They had the whole thing all figured out. So now we come back to Cyriaca. She looks at Severian from the side of her eye and says, "Am I dead then? Is that what you're saying?" Maybe Severian is thinking, well, good as dead. So,
but to go back to the vivimancer thing real quick. So yeah, because it's like, okay, a necromancer is somebody who, you could think about it, reaches into the world of the dead and pulls souls back to the world of the living. Whereas, a vivimancer would be someone who maybe after death can bring, living people back to, and it doesn't sound like can make them dead, but it almost sounds like can make them higher. Like, it's not like vivimancer and necromancers are opposite exactly, that it's more kind of like a vivimancer would be like, I don't know, an angel who helps you sort of see your higher self or something like that. Or
it could be so. Well, I mean, you think about this. This is how much you can believe Wolfe actually thought about Severian's life that he did not detail in this book. I mean, because at this point, Apu Punchau, we learn in Earth of the New Sun, is dead in his house. In his tomb, in his mausoleum. And here he is calling them to him to to resurrect him, or actually maybe, in one sense he's always there, right? Because that's what the Cumaean says: all time is the same. Otherwise, how can we go back or forward to it? So even though he's dead, there's a time when he's alive that's pulling them to this, making this connection. It's and all that would have to be thought, be actually considered if Wolfe intended it like that.
Yeah, and the final, I think at least pretty important sort of way to read that too is maybe, like you said, maybe an angel is not the best comparison to that, but rather it would be like Christ. It's like, Christ comes back from the dead.
Oh,
right?
wow. That's good. Yeah.
Souls to you. Like, who's the ultimate vivimancer? It would be something like Christ. Well, what is Punchao? He's bringing the new sun, and so that's kind of what a vivimancer is. So I think that, that would be a good way to think about it. I think is that kind of what he's saying here. All of this fits that kind of weird logic that is quote unquote magic. But when you're thinking about it in terms of not just sort of wish fulfillment, but really like, purpose or destiny or, future or salvation or whatever, that's what's maybe operating through all this other stuff going on that makes it look like magic or something else, but may actually be, whatever, higher meaning or something like that. But I mean, it's murky, but I think something like that is what I think he's pointing at. And that's part of that weird sort of, I understood, but I didn't really understand what I understood kind of thing.
Right.
That he says.
I find that Wolfe is just really, I'm sure I must have mentioned this before. Wolfe was always interested in messing with cause and effect in this way. In his Mountains Like Mice, one of his first science fiction story that he published, he basically has his character early on pondering the nature of cause and effect that has led him to his current situation. So now Cyriaca starts to figure that Severian is making stuff up and obscuring facts, and he really is obscuring facts. But she says, "You told me there was a witch who was the necromancer and that you only stumbled upon her fire. I think that you were the witch you spoke of, and the sick person you mentioned was your client to be executed, and the woman was your servant."
And Severian says, "That's because I've neglected to tell you all the parts of the story that have any importance."
Typical. So Severian says that he'd have laughed at the idea of someone calling him a witch, but then he thinks about the claw pressed against his breastbone and telling me, he says, that by its stolen power, I was a witch indeed in everything except knowledge. And I understood in the same sense that I had understood before, that though Apupunchau had brought it to his hand, he could not or would not take it from me. Any idea about this one?
I'm not clear, but it definitely... It's still messing with the weird sense of, okay, well, what actually causes magic? Like, is the claw some kind of like powerful item? And that's, one thing where he's talking about it like that. But then Apupunchau is something different, who's, maybe you can see it as like a sorcerer pulling people from the past or the future to help him survive. But that sort of weirder understanding that Severian is talking about says it's not just that. It's not just like, a weird sort of technology that they're using, which is what it would be if the claw was ever just, a magic item or something. It would be like just another kind of technology. But there's something else going on that makes it more mysterious and maybe more meaningful because of that. And so with this part, I still haven't worked out the exact logic of, okay, well, why is it a big deal that Apupunchau wouldn't take the claw from him? Is it because it's sort of, Apupunchau is not just going to be the savior who does all the work. He's sort of like, helping Severian along, and Severian's still going to do stuff himself. And maybe I don't know, but it's really compressed too there in one sentence. So I'm not pretty sure. So, and he does the same thing of like, I understood, but in the same year.
Well, okay. So, all right, let me take a few shots at this. First of all, Severian laughs at the idea of calling himself a witch, but then Apupunchau, he probably would not laugh at calling him a witch. After all, he's a vivimancer.
Yep.
So in that sense, yeah, guess what, Severian, you're a witch, because you and Apupunchau, in the final analysis, as he says, are the same person. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, because I have a very particular theory about how the claw works, that it's got the first Severian's blood on it, and the first Severian is in mirror world, much like the cat in the short story The Cat, which I think must have been part of the original manuscript of the Book of the New Sun, and he's the one performing these acts. So in that sense, he cannot do it because he knows that he's already looking back in time and saying, "Oh yeah, okay, well he needs the claw because that's how I'm finding him, and I'm and following him, and he's going to perform these acts, using the claw. So I can't take it from him. He needs it for the rest of his steps." Anyway, that's my shot.
Yeah.
Second question. If carrying the claw makes Severian a witch, then what does that say of the Pellerines? Are they witches? And we'll buckle in, everybody, because Severian is going to draw that line from the Pellerines to the witches.
Yeah. I wonder if they used it. Did they, they always had it, but it was on an altar. Did they actually ever use it? I don't know.
Well, there's all kinds of stories about things it does, right? It purifies it. It does blah, blah. Someone must have done it, whether it was the Pellerines themselves or some other version of Severian running around. I don't know.
It also gets into weird questions of how does the magic technology, whatever, work? Does it only work if Severian has it? Does it do things on its own? But yeah, it's
So Craig, what was that most important thing that Severian left out?
How hot Jolenta was. No. Severian says, most importantly, when the Revenant vanished, one of the scarlet capes of the Pellerines, like the one you're wearing now, was left behind in the mud. I have it in my sabretash. Do the Pellerines dabble in necromancy?
Ba, 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 ba. And this is so typical in a Wolfe novel. Severian says, I never heard the answer to my question, for just as I spoke, a tall figure of the Archon came up the narrow path that led to the fountain. So I ask, as I asked before, are the Pellerines witches and in different clothes? What were the Pellerines doing at Apupunchau's seance, or what was a Pellerine cloak doing at Apupunchau's seance? That is a question that we never specifically get answered. That is a puzzle for us to figure out, that he has left for us.
Yep. And I think the implication, at least I think the implication, is that either the Cumaean or Marin or both of them were traveling with the Pellerine's robe and had one and had at some point dressed in it. I don't think the easy implication is that there was some Pellerine hanging out who, this is the evidence we see from later. I think it's pretty much got to be that one or both of them
run around in Pellerine clothes.
Running in Pellerine clothes. Well, that means they actually were a Pellerine or were pretending to be one. We don't know. But yeah. So, but I know now's a place where we can.
Yeah. Well, now, Craig, I'm ready for my curiosity to surface.
There we go.
Curiositas Earthus.
So, Cyriaca used to be a Pellerine. Now she's dressed as a Pellerine. Is she essentially a witch? Now, Craig, I have a theory that the power of the witches is to connect to their memories of their other selves in other timelines or previous universe iterations. This is per Marin, as I interpret her explanation. We all connect to our previous timelines and universes in our dreams. And the power of the Cumaean is to be aware of those alternate timelines all the time, so that she is knowledgeable about the potential histories and futures and people that she's never met in this life, but did encounter in others. Sometimes, something else I feel confident about is that in no other timeline are there Pelorines, because, this is the first iteration of the claw. But perhaps in her previous timeline, she was a witch. And that is connected to the reason to choose to be a Pelorine. And that is part of her power to draw men to her. Maybe somehow she knew that Severian was going to be at this party because he was at this party before. And so she chose this very outfit, unconsciously, of course, in order to draw Severian to her. And that this is the meaning of this whole discussion about, did she draw Severian to her? Can a powerful witch draw someone to him or her? Are the Pelorines witches? Maybe this is the meaning. And maybe this is the meaning of all the coincidences that Severian experiences in his life. Of course, it helps if there is a first Severian arranging some of these things behind the scenes as well. But, what do you think?
Well, it would possibly then, that could be, how did Severian end up in the tent where the claw was? Maybe Pelorines had drawn him to it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I think it makes some nice connections between the stuff they're talking about here. It gives her wearing the Pelorine cloak like way more meaning, and sort of more than that. I think it's plausible. I don't know. I mean, I guess
it has been ruled plausible, and that is better than I usually get. So,
yeah. It also, I mean, I'm trying to think still too. Like, I think I'm still stuck on like if the Cumaean or Marin were Pelorines, like what does that, like why? What did that gain them?
Right? Yeah.
Like that's the weird thing. Like having the cloak would be a cool way for Severian to maybe make that connection with Cyriaca.
Well, how many of the Pelorines are witches? I mean, they obviously they have a mother. The witches have a mother. Mm-hmm. I think I understand now how, but it's always been suggested that the witches are like the intelligence core of the autarch, right? That they help, they handle logistics, and
that would be why Anery's always going talking to the Cumaean and the weird.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, it isn't. It at least it is an answer, and that without that, I don't have one. Yeah. But I like it. So here comes the Archon wearing a mask, and he's dressed as a bar guest. Now, a bar guest is many things. We don't know what it means to Severian. The typical definition is a large black dog. Sometimes it's a human figure. In stories where people interact with them, they seem very much like a werewolf. However, the primary meaning that I think Wolfe is going for here is that when you see a bar guest, it's an omen of your death. And he shows up now, and that is what he means to Cyriaca. And it would be funny to think of the Archon walking up in a dog costume. So, however it is, with his mask and his costume, Severian says that he wouldn't recognize him if he'd seen him in a good light.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he says, the dimness of the garden stripped his disguise from him as effectively as human hands could have, so that as soon as I saw the loom of his height and his walk, I knew him at once.
Remember, Severian is skilled at recognizing individual journeymen while they're masked. Yep.
And I gotta say, I used to always like Dune when I was reading Dune had it all over the place where people are like, I could tell by your gait, by the sound of your footsteps in the hallway who it was. I never believed that until I literally can tell my kids apart by just like hearing them walk around. Like I know which one it is. So
that's true.
I know, but I do.
Yeah.
So anyway,
so the Archon says, you found her. I should have guessed you would. And Severian, Mr. Cocky, says, yeah, I thought it was her, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. And I don't know if I don't know exactly when he would have figured that out but in usual style, Severian never tells us the most important things that he's thinking about until later on. So at different points, it could well be that once she starts talking about why she cheats all the time, then he's like, oh,
okay. Wait a minute.
So, and that's the most plausible, I think, or the one that makes sense. But
that probably, I mean, she's known who he is since she fainted, right?
Yep.
But Severian's slower on the uptake.
Yeah. But even though the Vivimancer stuff does sort of connect all the stuff about attraction and pulling people to you and how causes can be not just in a linear fashion, I do think that point about the Vivimancer and the rest does point to just at the very least sort of bringing up all those resonances of it all sounds like they're a reminder that there could be deeper stories going on and other causes moving in different ways that you're never quite sure of the initial things happening. And that could look like some kind of, big important destiny like Apu Punchao bringing you there. Could also look like manipulation, like, Cyriaca trying to seduce the guy who's supposed to kill her or something like that to see if she can get out. That maybe they're both versions of the same thing. And I like that. I think that's kind of it's a cool little chapter that when I was first reading it, I was more just like, what's up with this Cyriaca person? Why isn't the story happening? Whatnot. But you start to see pretty clearly that we're especially when Severian eventually explains what happens, because this is the last we see of Cyriaca directly. Like next chapter, Severian's leaving and you don't quite know what happens, but then you eventually realize that his decision to save her is like the big first.
You have to figure it out. That he's cut her loose. Because you think he leaves, it's like, okay, job done, dust my hands, and then everyone is, but then you realize he's somehow on the run. And so there are little hints in there that things didn't go quite as planned, but you don't get a clarification until later.
And I think when you're reading it first time, the basic implication is, oh, okay, he killed her. And then it's like, and now he's leaving.
Yes.
You're right. It's only later that he goes back and talks about what he actually did. So, but what he's doing is, basically setting himself up to have to go on the run again because he's going to have saved a woman.
Because he is like so lousy at this job, really. Yeah.
Because he's merciful. It makes sense.
So, I mean, but as for this chapter, we just cut to commercial break, right? Immediately.
Yep.
And, and then we, wait for the cigarette commercials or whatever comes next. And so anyway, that's it. I hope that any of you who are still out there that will reach out to us with your ideas and your other comments and your thoughts and your corrections and your complaints, and that you will bring them to us on the Facebook group, the subreddit, Twitter, Bluesky, email, or the Patreon site. And you can find out how to do that in the show notes. Leave a review on Apple Podcast or Stitcher. But most of all, tell your Wolf reading friends. And until you hear from us next, shirking our work or having our boss check up on us because we're not very good at really doing the task that he's laid before us, may the Moira favor you.
Take care.
I'm mad, 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 like I'm blind. You've been in the SS in 43.
It was stupid thing. Let go.
Is that typing or something else?
No,
Or is
it's
that,
me.
oh no,
I'm
you're
taking
opening
the
it's
stuff off
crinkled.
of it.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's the strangest sounding.
Story
typing.
starts
Wolf's
that
version
Al
here.
Rashid
Yep.
is. Yeah.
Oh, I think we're actually. I think we might be
the
on a
story
little
starts
delay.
with.
Wait, hold on a second. I think
I've detected that. I'm trying to leave some space for you.
Yeah, let me hold on. Let me hit stop and then let me restart.
Guard definition. This would be so much harder back 30 years ago. I'm just getting stuff for fish. I guess we're done.
I think so.